Hey everyone, it is Donna Cravotta, and we are here with an interview for the Real 50 Over 50. But our guest had to cancel at the last minute because her dog was very sick and she had to take him to the vet. And you get me, I'm going to interview myself. So, um, I'm just going to talk about why I created the Real 50 Over 50. We talked about it a little bit last week, and unfortunately, this first interview with the guest didn't work out. But I am going to share why I created this. I'm also going to share a bit about storytelling and why it's important in your business. But I woke up with this idea on February 17th. And I called a friend of mine who did marketing and PR for um, television shows and television stations. And she's very creative and very original. And she loved the idea. So we kind of brainstormed for a couple of days and threw ideas around, and this just started to form into something real. And I did keyword research, and that's how I usually figure out, directions that I'm going to go and listen to see what's happening and figure out the direction that I want to take. And it was startling. What came up when I did some keyword research around women who are over 50 was makeup to wear and how to dress, how not to dress, how to use dating apps, what you should eat, what you shouldn't eat, a plethora of health issues, and how your life is now going to suck. But there was very little that was positive, and there were no real conversations happening. So I started to layer upon layer upon layer on this idea, and it grew into conversations and really understanding what women over 50 are doing, and not from a demographic perspective, because I really don't believe in demographics. I really think that the way to connect with people online is to listen to them and to understand them. And whether you're trying to sell services or not, or just trying to connect, really understanding what people need, what they want, what makes them tick, what they care about, what they value, how they want to spend their time. And that's another thing that has been coming up as I've been building this. Um, well, let me go back to the keyword research for a minute. I don't want to bounce all over the place. But with the keyword research, what really hit me was I was using the same tools that people, organizations, companies that do marketing use. So everybody is using these same topics to market to women our age. So what are they marketing to us? What we should wear, how we should wear our hair, the makeup we should use, what we should eat, all of these things that are going to go wrong with us as our bodies age. And this is what is being perpetuated into the conversations around aging. And it's a bunch of bullshit. I was not okay with that. And that was what really lit the fire under me to make this happen. And as I'm going through um, the questionnaires of the people that are stepping up to be part of this, I'm seeing some things that are consistent throughout all of what we're all experiencing. When you turn 50, there is this thing that happens that I have called the no bullshit button. And I think we've all had that to some degree. But when you turn 50, it changes. You really don't give a shit about what people think, about what they want, about, you really are, you really kind of step into your own. And I think since we were raised in a time where like women's rights were first emerging, I mean, like I was a little girl in the 70s, like 60s and the 70s when this was happening. So, I'm watching the news and there's women burning their bras and taking birth control pills and fighting for rights. And, um, I watched my mom as a single mother, raising four kids and, having to get a job for the first time. And I lived in, I grew up in Brooklyn on a block that had 5 buildings on one side and 5 buildings on the other side, and it was primarily single moms with kids. I mean, we there was easily 100 kids on my block and very few dads. So I watched all of these women make their way in the world, but it was hard. And going to work, I went to work in the 80s, and, the sexism was awful. Even women, like, I worked in law firms for many years, like major global law firms, and women who were partners were in the minority, and what they had to go through to become a partner was brutal. And there was even something that we called female partner syndrome, or FPS, because it's of what they had, like, this was a result of what they had to go through to get to the same positions that the men were in. And, we were all groped. It was just kind of like, yeah, this is gonna happen, and, everyone dealt with it in their own way, but there was no going and complaining about this. So, like, we came up the hard way, and we had to put up with things that, women that are younger than us don't really have to deal with to the extent that we did. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, but, um, it's not as blatant as it was when we were coming up in the world. And I think when we reach a point in our life where we are no longer taking care of people on a daily basis, we are no longer having to be in this job that, we were kind of, I don't even know what the words are, but, like, we were kind of bred into or raised into, or something. But for the most part, we've reached a point where we can make a decision as to what we want to do based on what we're told to do or what we have to do. And I think that that just kind of escalates that no bullshit button. And what people are stepping out and doing is amazing. And the other thing that precipitated this was the Forbes 50 over 50 lists and other lists like that. And they basically are celebrating women who are already famous, who already, people, their household names, people know them. And not to minimize what they're doing in the world, it's amazing. But I sat down and made a list, and within 15 minutes, I had 50 people that I knew personally that are doing really amazing things, and not enough people know about them. So that is really the driver for all of this. How are we going to fuel this no bullshit button and take the work that we're already doing and make a bigger impact together, collecting our visibility, collecting our audiences, collecting our knowledge and our wisdom, and sharing it in a new way? And I already have about over 100 people that are interested. We've already got about 30 profiles up on the website, which is, um, let me just put it up here. It is thereal50over50.com, so you could check them out there. And we're starting social campaigns and PR campaigns, so it's going to get out there in a big way. And let me see what else I had on my list here. I had to make a list quickly because I had to interview myself. I only had a short period of time to retool here. But that's the other thing that happens. We're adaptable. We figure it out. Okay, so she couldn't make it. Her dog was sick, sad, but we move on. And so we also have women in this group that are all the way into their 80s. And I have been listening to interviews. I have been reading through people's questionnaires as they submit them. And there are things that are recurring themes. One of them is that one of the questions that I ask is, what do you think increased visibility will do for your business? And very few people said anything about growing their business. It was about making a bigger impact, helping more people, leaving a legacy, sharing what they know. And that just made me feel so good because we're living in a time where, there's a lot of scary things happening out there, and a lot of things that are out of our control and we just can't do anything about. And I think particularly at the age that we're at, it's a little extra scary because things that we counted on or paid into for many years may not be there for us when we need them. So we need to make really wise decisions now, and we need to plan for our future, the future of our families, our businesses, and the fact that all of these women just want to, leave a better world, make things better, use what they've learned to help others, it's really something worth noticing. And let me see what else I have on my list here. One of the other things is we don't want to waste any time because not saying what we've done in the past has been wasting time, but we weren't the priority of how we spent our time. And now that we can step into that at this stage of life, there's a realization that time is really finite and it is our most valuable asset. And how can we make the most of it? So the no bullshit button comes in again because we don't have any time to waste. We have to make the most out of every minute of everything that we do, and really protect our energy. I know I had a health issue, and a lot of other women my age have health issues. And you really learn quickly you can't do what you did before. You don't have the level of energy that you had in the past, and you have to reorganize how you spend that energy. So everything that you do is more intentional, and um, you know the goal setting is different. It's more about, like, can I get this done? It's not a task list anymore. It's like, does this matter? Like, what is the level of intention, of impact, of is this worth my time? Is it worth somebody else's time to come and listen to me say this, um, and all of that comes into play, and it changes the way that you view everything. It changes the way that you view relationships. One thing that I have been experiencing lately is my son is almost 21 years old. He's in college. He's been gone for a while, and now we're getting to the phase of what comes next for him. And I've become his consultant. I'm not mom anymore. I'm a mom consultant. So I can't weigh in on all the things that I weighed in on in the past. We had to redesign our relationship. And I can see, like, my parents have passed, so I don't have to do this with my parents. But I can see where, if I was dealing with aging or ailing parents at this point in my life, how it would be different than when I was with it when I was in my 30s. So it's all just, it changes, your viewpoint changes, your vantage changes, and what matters to you change. And this is why um well, one of the other questions that I asked in the questionnaire is, what would you tell um, the person, what would you tell yourself if you were speaking to your 20 or 30-year-old self? And across the board, the responses were very similar. They were, I would do less and enjoy more. I would have faith in myself. I would trust myself. I would understand my own value. I would say no. I wouldn't have had children so young. I wouldn't have gotten married so young. I would have moved. I would have traveled. I mean, there are all these different things that show that we didn't expand our lives when we were younger. And, now we have this opportunity to do it now. Again, that no bullshit button comes in because there's things we want to do. And now, again, that time is more finite than it was when we were in our 20s and our 30s. So how do we bring these values into ourselves now at this age? And I'm hoping that this interview series that I'm doing will help a lot of people. And let's see, what else do I have on my list here? Okay, before I get into the next thing, I just want to talk a little bit about who we're going to be interviewing next week. So next week we have Hillary Silver, And I've known Hillary for about 10 years, but we haven't been in contact. And she was a psychologist and a relationship coach, and she's branching out into doing more. So we will get into that more next week. But I want to make sure you come back. It's not going to be me again, I promise. So now I want to spend a little bit of time talking about stories and storytelling in your business and why this is important. So, when you share, well, I'm going to start with knowing your story and gathering your story because over the last year, I've redesigned my business because of my energy. I couldn't do what I did in the past, and I really didn't want to. It was too much work, it was too much responsibility for other people, and it was time for me to realign my business to match my life and where I wanted to go in this next, I'm saying third of my life, but who knows? We could live for a long, long time or not. Who knows? We don't know. But anyway, back to the stories. Um, what I realized, which I didn't realize when I was doing a lot of other things, but I realized when I just scaled my business down to doing one thing, is that people disconnect from their stories, particularly if they've been in business for a long time. And they forget the things that got them to where they are right now. And those are the things that people connect with. Like what got you? What got you to the point where you are? What what have you been doing for 15, 20, 30, 40 years that makes you an expert in what you do? Like that you've gotten those, 10 or 20 or 30,000 hours of mastery. We leave parts out. And when we leave parts out, there's gaps in our story and there's gaps with our connection with ourselves. And that's where there's this gray area and a disconnect when you're trying to connect with other people. And this could be from a sales perspective, this could be from just a connection perspective. And I always lean towards connect first. Sales will happen, but connect first. So the connection, I'm going to really, this, everything that I'm going to talk about is going to be from a connection perspective because we need community, particularly when we're working virtually and we're sitting in our houses alone for way too many hours. And we really do need to build community around what we do. And when you have these gaps because you forgot about this thing that you offered 5 years ago, or this course that you took 10 years ago, or that you used to do something totally entirely different, and you cut that off when you started your business, you cut off everything that kind of gave you this framework, this foundation for what you're doing now. And when you start to pull those things together, you start to see a more whole version of yourself. And that is the version that you put out into the world. And when you're putting that version out into the world, what you're doing is you are showing everybody that you're connecting with who you are, what you're made of, and what all of your parts are, how you got to where you are, and why you are credible, why you have this experience to be able to help somebody else. Even if you're doing something totally new, it's not new because you've done it for all of these years. When I stopped working in the law firm, I worked in the law firm for 27 years. I started in 1983 as a nighttime word processor. And, when I did like a zillion jobs along the way. And I ended 27 years later as a project manager and I managed very big global projects in the marketing and the finance department. And across those years, I had learned a zillion things. I was known as Mr. Fix It. If something didn't work, if nobody could figure it out, bring it to Donna. She'll figure it out and she'll get it done. So I couldn't even tell you what my job description was. But I cut all that off because I was like, I'm doing something else. That was then, this is now. And my business was not successful until two things happened. One thing was I started to train people. And somebody came into my course and she IM'd me right after I did a training, and she said, "Oh, that was amazing. Like, how long have you been doing that?" I said, "This is the first time." And she said, "No, this is clearly not the first time you did it." And I was like, "Oh, right. I did this for 10 years." So not only was I doing this in my job, but I was traveling all over the world doing this. I was doing this with translators. I was training people in Abu Dhabi at 3 o'clock in the morning from, with my baby on my lap. So, I mean, I had tons of experience doing it, but I didn't attribute it to what I was doing in my business. So once I started to pull the parts that I needed and let the other stuff go, I let go of that resentment of spending so much time in a job that I really didn't love and really embraced the things that I had experience in and bringing them into my business. The same thing happens with PR. I had a client who needed PR, so I hired a PR trainer. We're a couple of sessions in, and she said, "I can't train you. You're my colleague." Because I did PR for like 8 or 10 years in my job. But it wasn't, it was just work. It wasn't PR. So I had all of this background I didn't realize I had. And the other thing that happens is that you forget things that you did. So, like Stephanie Delfonso, who you met last week and you'll meet again in a couple of weeks, she's a hypnotist, has been a hypnotist for 20 years or so. But what she did in the 80s, she was a celebrity DJ in Florida with spiky hair and big long nails. And if you go to her website, you'll see it. And she didn't ever talked about that. And then after she was a DJ, she was the first automated voice for hotel answering machines, supermarkets, taxi cabs. Her husband tells a story of he every time he traveled a lot during those years, and every time he'd go into a hotel, he'd check to see if his wife's voice was on the answering machine. And but she never talked about that. And when I started working with her, I was like, "Well, your voice has been working for 40 years." So, like, yes, people may have, like, a bit of distrust around hypnosis, but if you start to talk about your voice working for 40 years, that changes this, that kind of lessens that possible distrust of what hypnotism is. And maybe people will open up and they'll say, "Oh, well, she did things that I understand. She was a DJ. I understand a DJ. I understand automated voices." They'll start to think, move your bananas to the belt. But then there's a familiarity there. It's not something that's really out there and maybe they're not comfortable with. So, think about those things that you can bring in to what you're doing now, that were things that you've done in the past. I had another client that I worked with years ago who she was a sleep coach for babies. And she wanted to expand her offerings because, babies are only babies for a short period of time. So she had been writing blog posts for years. She had hundreds of blog posts. So we sat at her dining room table one day and we went through all of her blog posts and we were able to create 6 funnels out of all of her blog posts, content she already had. So, what they were was, sleep, to be a sleep coach for 6 different age groups: babies, pre-K, elementary school, middle school, high school, college. So it changed her whole business because now she had the whole family. She had, a 20-year spread of how she could help families sleep. And from that, other things happened because now it's not just impacting the family for a short period of time, it was impacting the family in an ongoing way. And it changed her business. Looking back to see what she already had all of that content. She didn't have to rewrite it. She just had to repackage it. So, think about the things that you already have. Think about, how your stories can resonate with the people that you want to connect with. It builds trust, it builds credibility, it's inspirational. Um, it makes them feel connected to you in a way that, some canned marketing language could never do. And it's easier because it's your story, you know it, and, it takes away some of that, um reluctance to market because you're sharing you. It also takes away competition. Nobody can compete with you. It then becomes collaboration. So you can build relationships around that as well. Peer relationships, partnership relationships, because it's not that you're competing around offering the same service. You're showing up and you're maybe doing similar things, but your stories are different, and it expands who you could speak to instead of going into competition mode and narrowing your scope. So really think about your story and the parts that you've left out and what got you here. What were those things? What were you excited about 2 years ago? Where does that fit now? And this isn't an exercise to get stuck in the past. This is an exercise to think about what you could let go of and say goodbye forever, right? And what are the things that will help build that vehicle that takes you into the future and that you can bring other people with you. So, for me, when I went through this exercise in the past year of redesigning my business, I realized I was a storyteller. I realized I helped people tell their stories, and I've been doing this for years, but I never talked about it. So, it's just really interesting how we have all of these things around us, but we don't see them because we're busy looking for something else, or we're busy looking for somebody else to take us somewhere or teach us something. But we always have the answers inside of us. And I think that that is another thing that happens when you turn 50 is you start to realize that nobody has your answers. You have your answers. And it's a journey inside to find them, and sometimes you need help, and sometimes there's healing involved with that, and that's all okay because come back here. We've got some people that could help you do that, and, I am gonna wrap up a little early today because it's just me, but, I just want to encourage you to come back, connect with the women that are being featured in this interview series. Some of them have been my personal coaches, mentors, healers, friends, clients, colleagues. Um, I've been their clients, so and some I don't know at all. So it's just been such an amazing experience to pull this together, and I thank you for being part of it in whatever capacity you are part of it. And please come back on Wednesdays, watch the replays, share these women because the one thing that I can tell you is that collectively we want to help others. We want to make a difference and we want to leave this world a better place than the one we came into. So, thank you for spending some time with me today, and we will see you back here next Wednesday at noon Eastern Time.